You're listening to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, episode 129.
Let me just be honest in that I've been in the golden handcuffs. I remember in my mid 30s, I'd been working for an organization for 12 years. I had a really great salary. I was a single mom, so I needed this salary. My divorce, agreement did not include child support. I had great benefits. I had a good title. I was working for an organization that was really well known in town and had all the best places to work awards. And I'd grown up there. So, when I introduced myself, and I think listeners know this, lots of times when you introduce yourself or even in your friends, you talk about work. Well, what do you do? And I had never known a version of myself that didn't say, "Hi, I'm Kelly. I work at XYZ Bank."
You'll consider many factors when deciding what is next for you and your career. You've heard about the golden handcuffs and might have them now. And while money is not the most crucial factor, we must acknowledge that it is vital to consider how much money you'll be paid in your next position. And money might be one of the decisions why you might not leave your current job. The golden handcuffs is one circumstance that impacts your confidence about how you show up at your job each day. There are many others. Today, you will meet Kelli Thompson. Kelli is a women's leadership coach and speaker who helps women advance to the rooms where decisions are made. She has coached and trained hundreds of women to trust themselves, lead more confidently, and create a career they love. She is the founder of the Clarity and Confidence Women's Leadership Program and a Stevie Award winner for Women in Business Coach of the Year. She is the author of Closing the Gap, Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck, which is released today, November 1st, 2022. In today's episode, you will learn what happens when high performers face difficulty at work, what leadership mindset shifts will help you step into your excellence, Kelli's Do Less framework to save you time and increase your efficiency, why clarity beats hustle every time, and what to do when you have the golden handcuffs. This is the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrell. I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven 4-step formula. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. There is still plenty of time left in 2022 to interview for a new position. Companies are finalizing their staffing numbers for the year, and it's also a great time to leverage your talents and your expertise into a new role. To help you with that, I have a new guide called 26 Sentence Starters to help you answer any interview question. You can learn more about it at my website, johnnerrell.com. This 40-page guide will help you craft your answers to 5 interview question categories and fine-tune your messaging as you interview for that job you'll love. Visit johnnerrell.com or check the show notes for more information on how to purchase 26 sentence starters to help you answer any interview question. At mid-career, you are constantly evaluating your career and where it's going. I believe it is one of the healthiest things we do professionally. It doesn't mean that you're getting ready to leave, but you might be considering your options and what may be next. Kelli Thompson has a fantastic career journey, and there is no question her career is taking off for her at mid-career. Her new book, Closing the Confidence Gap, will be devoured by many looking to level up their careers and figure out whatever is next. We spend time during this episode talking about 2 key takeaways. First, why clarity beats hustle every time, and what to do when you have the golden handcuffs. Getting greater career clarity about your next steps and all that it entails breeds confidence in handling and addressing these circumstances and many more. We hope our conversation helps you figure out whatever is next. And now I want you to meet author, speaker, and coach, Kelli Thompson.
I'm Kelli Thompson, and I'm a women's leadership coach, and I'm an author of the new book, Closing the Confidence Gap: Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck. And I help women advance to the rooms where decisions are made. That's my mission.
Kelli, I am going to enjoy so much having this conversation with you, and I know everyone listening will too. But first and foremost, congratulations on your new book. I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while and seeing everything you've been putting out there. Obviously, we're recording this before launch day, but just a couple of weeks. And I just want to offer you my sincere congratulations on such a wonderful accomplishment on a book that's going to help a lot of people.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. So here was the fun part. So I always send my guests a little form before we get started. And one of the questions I get them to think about is, what did you want to be growing up? And you are the first person, to my knowledge, that I can remember who is actually not a meteorologist in the field that wanted to be a meteorologist like me. What was it about the weather and meteorology that fascinated you as a kid?
I don't know. All I remember from the time I was a little girl, just everything about the weather fascinated me. I live in Nebraska, and so we're right up in Tornado Alley. And so I just remember sitting outside, looking at the clouds, watching the clouds change. Like my goal was to see a tornado. And I remember when I was a little girl, I still remember this day vividly. It was the last day of school, and they said there was going to be severe storms in the forecast. So, me, as I think I was probably 8, like, I'm ready. And sure enough, right, the clouds start to get dark and it starts to hail. And I'm standing outside watching all this just in awe, like watching the clouds move and all of this come up. And I see a funnel cloud in the field. We kind of lived at the edge of town in the cornfield kind of across from us. And it starts to come down. And I'm out there and I'm so excited. And I will never forget. My mom comes out and she's like, Kelli Hinshocks, that's my maiden name. She's like,
Okay.
get back inside into the basement. And I'm like yelling at her. I'm like, but like, this was like my Super Bowl as an 8-year-old, was like
Yeah.
watching this tornado come down. And I think it was just the fascination of it. At the time, you'll laugh. I remember opening the newspaper every morning because you get the newspaper back in the 80s.
Correct.
And I loved watching and reading how different parts of the world had different temperatures and how cold fronts would come through. And I'd watch it on the news. It was just purely fascinating. And yeah, and that's what I wanted to be the whole time. Was I just love to talk about the weather.
Yeah. And you actually started studying that in college, and then something changed. What was that?
Yeah, and I think this actually clues into what we're kind of going to talk about today. So I started college as a meteorology major, and I'm sitting in all of these like calculus and physics classes, which I didn't really love. Maybe some people love fluid motion and calculus. I didn't totally love it, but then I kind of had an aha. I said, oh my gosh, if I want to be a meteorologist and one that wants to make it a decent living, because sometimes they don't get paid all that much, I'm going to have to work the 6 and 10 o'clock news every night. And then I was like, oh, well, when am I going to see my family? I don't want to work the 6 and 10 o'clock news every night. And that was like my first clue. I didn't have language for it at the time when I was 19, that maybe that career choice wouldn't align with my values. It was too early to know that family was a big value for me, but I really honestly made a career change because I was like, I just don't think I can handle the lifestyle that a meteorologist, would want to do. Now that I'm on the other end of that, and my daughter's a senior and she's going to go off to college, I've already joked with my husband. I'm like, we can go on storm chaser missions, because now I can go like scratch that itch without, having the lifestyle where I'm working the 6 and 10 o'clock news every night. But I've always been fascinated by weather, and that has never gone away. But I actually switched my major to political science, and then I got into organizational development in my career and human resources. And so instead of studying weather patterns, I study people patterns. So here we are.
And people patterns are without a doubt absolutely fascinating. It's one of the reasons why as coaches we love the work that we do in looking at certain kind of patterns or behaviors, even from an organizational lens, where we work with people who may experience similar pain points. To that point, Kelli, what would you say are some of the pain points that the women you specifically work with have and you help them overcome?
Yeah, such a good question. I see two themes. The first theme that I see is lots of times women are accelerating up the career chain and they've been promoted, or perhaps they've been tapped on the shoulder and their leader has told them, hey, you know what, you're going to be due for a promotion here and this job is opening up. And all of a sudden they have a confidence crisis. They feel a lot of imposter syndrome. They get to this next level of leadership and they start to look around and a couple of things start to happen. One, they're at a higher level. And at a higher level, you're making bigger decisions. And when you're making bigger decisions that impact more people in the organization, you have a lot more exposure. And with that increased exposure comes more criticism, right? Because you're just making decisions at a higher level in which the people below you like to judge as that decision is good or bad. And so that can really cause a lot of imposter syndrome, just the feeling like, oh my gosh, I got promoted. I'm going to be going and sitting in these executive meetings, and maybe I'm the only female. That's also very common. And they might be thinking to themselves, I'm going to be found out if I open my mouth and they discover that it was a mistake to promote me and I don't really know what they think I know. And so lots of times I'm working with a lot of women who are accelerating up in the organization, and they really need to make that mindset shift from doer to leader and build the confidence that comes along with that. I would say the second thing that most women are coming to me with, especially right now, and especially mid-career, is they start to have a little bit of a career crisis. Maybe the first, up through age 29 to 35, they just kind of say yes to things, which I think is good, so that we learn a breadth of skills. But they've said yes to a lot of things because you know what? People said, hey, you should do that. You should check this out. You should consider this job. And they get into their mid 30s to their mid 40s and they look around and they're like, I'm making really good money, but I don't think I'm very happy. It's often called the golden handcuffs. Like, oh, geez, like I feel like I'm kind of pushing a rock uphill every day, but I don't know if I can make a change. I don't know if I can afford to make a change, but now my mental health is starting to suffer. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, and they're saying that when they're 45 years old. And it really is a career crisis where they know they need to make a career change. They know they need to bring their life in alignment with their values and have more work-life balance, but ultimately really get clear on what their talents are. And then just kind of solve that problem of, well, how do I find a career in alignment with my talents? So just to sum all that up, it's women accelerating, looking for more confidence, or those looking to make a career change and going, I don't know what to do. And both of those are just so normal.
With the people you work with, is this one of the first times, or maybe even the first time, where we could say work has gotten hard for them? Especially when you think about people who are tagged as high performers or high potentials, that is that career crisis you're talking about something where they're experiencing some kind of difficulty they haven't or never felt before?
Yes. You just put language to that. And I'm just thinking of 3 clients in my mind right now where that's exactly the case. They were really smart. They were excellent doers. And because they just got things done, because they were high performers, high achievers, they were always tapped on the shoulders for opportunities. But the difference is, and I talk about this with some of them, but I like the language you used, is they were always rewarded for their doing. And now all of a sudden they need to be leading. And that's a different mindset, doer versus leader. As a doer, we get all of our accolades from checking all the boxes and jumping in and saving the day. And hey, John, look how fast I got this done. And, John says, oh, you're so amazing, right? That's the individual contributor mindset. But now that they're leaders and they're leading teams, they recognize they can't jump in and be the hero all the time. They have to coach other, people to be the hero. They have to coach the doing. And when their ego tries to make that shift of, I can no longer get accolades as the doer, and now I kind of have to find rewards as the coach and the mentor. And it takes time to explain things and slow things down and watch others make mistakes. That's a really difficult mindset shift. So I really think that you have hit the nail on the head. Is there's that pain point, that weird liminal space where I'm no longer a doer, but I'm not quite a great leader yet. And I just don't know which way to go. And it just feels messy and weird and ambiguous. And I think that you just really described that very well.
Well, thank you. It actually comes back to my days when I was teaching middle school mathematics.
Yeah.
And I would have the school where I taught at, we had an advanced track where we had some 7th and 8th graders take freshman year algebra, and some of them admittedly couldn't handle it. And all of a sudden math got really hard and they have that confidence crisis. And we have to have a conversation around no college is ever going to see your middle school mathematics transcripts. So that's fine. Don't worry about it. But I always took that with me going forward, especially with people I've worked with who are high performers and high potentials, to just kind of hold that space for a minute to be like, they're struggling right now because this is foreign to them. They're not
Yes.
used to having struggle. And
Yes.
so, to our point, for anybody who's listening here today, we just want to know that that's normal. That's a normal part of your career path and progression. Kelli, you've talked a couple times about this transition from doer to leader. What would you say is the most important thing someone needs to do to flip that switch so they can have their most success in a leadership type role?
I would say the most important thing is the mindset shift.
Mhm.
Coming from corporate America, where I did a lot of leadership development training, I say this in my book, and looking back, we promoted people from doer to leader, and we just expected that the day they showed up in their new job, they would all of a sudden make this magical mindset shift where they would be totally okay delegating all their old work, all they're doing, and they would come into work that day knowing how to be a coach and knowing how to be patient and knowing how to have performance conversations and knowing how to kind of, hold that identity as someone who is teaching people how to save instead of doing all the saving. Maybe asking more of the right questions instead of having all the answers. And so really that number one thing that's so hard, and you're right, it feels like a struggle because it's really outside our comfort zone. The ego was just really happy day in, day out, doing all this doing and getting all these stars. And now all of a sudden, oh, this is uncomfortable. I have to ask
Mhm.
coaching questions and I have to ask questions and not get answers. And so that mindset shift, even just being aware in the moment, I need to make the mindset shift instead of jumping in and doing. I need to sit back and ask, is this the right development opportunity for me, or should I be delegating this to someone on my team? Just those little pauses of mindset shifts can be so transformational, but I don't think we talk about them enough.
We don't. You're absolutely right in that regard. So how do you help someone where their default mindset is they just have to work harder?
Ooh, that's so good. So in my book, I talk about this framework. I call it the do less framework, LESS. And so L really just addresses that. It's losing the belief why we think we need to say yes when we want to say no. And one of the beliefs that I address is kind of the struggle belief, or I call it the capability belief. A lot of people have this belief of, if I say no, people are going to think I'm not capable. And where I also see that with kind of the hustle culture mindset of, you would be shocked to learn how many, I think, people, especially women, have been told by their families of origin that if you aren't struggling, then you aren't working hard enough. And I really encourage them to ask themselves, is that true? Is it true that if I'm not struggling and grinding and overachieving, then I'm not working hard enough? So, let's just address that belief. Is that true? And then the rest of it just follows. Let's start expressing our expectations and setting boundaries. That's the E, setting boundaries around what the new work looks like and then delegating everything that isn't that. The S is shifting from doing to leading, which we've just already talked about. And then the last S is to start delegating. And I really encourage them to start delegating with low stakes tasks,
Mhm.
because what happens a lot is we hoard, and we do because we're comfortable doing all the doing. We're getting our gold stars even as a leader. And then all of a sudden we're on overload and we're like, oh my gosh, I have to delegate something. And then we delegate something when the stakes are high. And then people make mistakes because they've never been delegated to before. And then we tell ourselves a story. See, I can't delegate anything around here because people just make mistakes. So I tell them, start delegating with low stakes tasks because people will make mistakes. But when they can make repetition when the stakes are low, we're going to be more confident delegating when the stakes are high. So LESS.
That's powerful. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
And there was something you have also mentioned about how clarity beats hustle every time. Tell us more
Yes.
about that.
So I have this belief that I am testing out into the universe. I think it is possibly my next book, where I've been in corporate America and did exactly what you just said. If I just work harder, then I'll get ahead. If I just take on more, then I'll get ahead. And even when I started my business back in 2019, I thought, well, if I just hustle really hard and say yes to all of the things, then my business will be really successful, right? And I think that's not an uncommon mindset in corporate America today. I think it's just kind of the American mindset. Let's hustle and see how much money we can make. And then the pandemic hit, and I lost like 80 to 90% of my income in a month, right? Speaking is canceled. My corporate coaching contracts were canceled. And so, I wasn't bringing in any money. Like, things really couldn't get any worse. So I thought, well, if things can't get any worse, what do I really want to do? I'm like, I really want to work with women. I really enjoy my time working with women. I grew up as in a male dominated field of finance and tech. And so I was often the only woman. So I had a really soft spot in my heart for that. And I decided, well, what if I just went all in on women? Like, what if I got really crystal clear about who I served and I didn't worry about alienating maybe the existing clients that I had? And so I kind of just tested that. And what I found, and I have this mantra, it's written behind me, is called success loves clarity. Because what I found was the more clear I was, the more successful that my business was. Because I think one of the truths is that, the world is really noisy. There is no shortage of experts that tell you how to run your business. There's no shortage of opinions on what you think you should do. You're going to scroll the internet today, scroll social media, and you are just inundated with stuff. And I thought to myself, well, what if I could just be crystal clear and consistent about what I do and who I serve? Because perhaps that will cut through the noise instead of trying to be everything to everybody. And I've never looked back since. And so I continue to test this little mantra of like, well, what if, the more clear I am, the more successful I can be. And I really encourage my clients to do the same, especially when they are in leadership. So when I'm talking with women in leadership today, that's the same advice I give them. I'm like, your organization is busy. People have competing agendas. People are going to be sitting around the conference table, and it can be easy just to say things or just speak up just so your voice is heard. But I would really argue that clarity is going to beat hustle, because when you are consistent and you are clear about who you are, what your agenda is, and what asks you can make, you're teaching people how to use you. People know how to use you. And so I even work on that with my clients, especially executives or women who are in a job search. How are you being crystal clear about exactly what you want, exactly who you are, and what you need? Because clarity beats hustle every time, right? Because when we're clear, we're not confused. Like, when I know what you do, I know how to work with you, and I'm not confused and stalling and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I 100% completely agree with everything you say. Is that because when we have a very clean and clear message, we make it easier for the person who's hearing that message to make a decision about it. Whether you're networking, you're interviewing, you're in a coaching relationship. I mean, even think about any kind of sales relationship. Right? The clearer a salesperson is in terms of what they are offering allows me to make a decision whether I want to purchase or not. And I absolutely loved your point about how much noise is out there, and especially in this mid-career space and mid-career journey. Everything that you're talking about, imposter syndrome, the hustle, all of those things are compounding these mid-career professionals day in and day out. That's ultimately holding them back from having that professional life and their personal life as well in that fullest potential they know they're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those questions that I have to just simply say it comes with a lot of gratitude. Throughout my career, I have had the honor and the privilege to work with some of the most amazing women leaders throughout my career. Having a 25-year career in education and working primarily in the education space, certainly a lot of women leaders, and to be fair, a lot of outstanding men as well. But I have always admired the women who I have been led by, I have been able to work alongside. What is your favorite tip to help specifically women leaders gain more confidence in their careers so they can make the impact or have the career that they want?
A tip that I'm loving more and more, and I actually just wrote about it the other day, is saying no. I'm going to go back to the meteorology example that I gave early on in my career. Now, I was not wise enough to make any sense of this at the time, but I said no to that career because something in my 19-year-old brain said, I don't think I want to live a life like this. But how often do we just say yes to things because it seems like good money? They have really good benefits. Oh my gosh, my title would be amazing. And we wonder why we're not confident. We wonder why we feel like we're exhausted and we're pushing a rock uphill. And so when women are really struggling with confidence, the first place I always start is we get really clear on our values. And I know I will tell you that almost every client rolls their eyes at this because, whenever they hear the word values, they think of like corporate values that are pasted
Hmm.
on a website. They're there, but we don't really listen to them. But we get really clear about what are your values? How do you want to work? How do you want to live your life? What are your non-negotiables? Like, what are the things that you will not compromise on? And lots of times they realize the source sometimes of their lack of confidence or their burnout is because they're like, oh my gosh, I have all of these things in my life and in my career and my schedule that aren't in alignment with my values. Then we have to really talk about what their unique talents are. Like, what have you been put on this earth to do? And then they kind of had another aha. Oh, you know what? Like 70% of my work just kind of makes me feel, ugh. Only 20% really lights me up and surges my energy. And those two things together, what are my values? How do I want to work? What are my non-negotiables? What are my talents? And am I spending 80% of my day really using those? That is a huge aha, to which I say, I want you to say no to everything that isn't that. And that is
Mm.
actually a really huge confidence boost because saying no, all my clients have reported back some similar feelings. Lots of times we say, oh, just say yes and the confidence will come, which is true. I think confidence is a side effect of taking action. And saying no to things that don't serve you and that aren't in alignment with your values and talents, women report back to me, and I feel the same way, that they feel empowered. They all of a sudden feel like this sense of intentionality, like, oh, I'm driving my career. They feel confident. And that saying no to everything that isn't in alignment of what they want is a huge confidence booster. One, just the ability to say no, right? Because that comes with all
Correct.
sorts of feelings, but then once they realize, oh, this is conscious and intentional, and I can drive my career in the direction I want, is a huge clarity and confidence boost.
Well said. There is so much power in being able to say no. And Kelly, when you talk about values alignment and being clear about the work that you do, we would be remiss if we didn't take a couple moments and talk about where money comes into this entire conversation. When you are the breadwinner or you are a contributor to your household budget, especially right now, what we're hearing with the economy and inflation where it is, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to. And there are people out there who are struggling with making a career pivot, but are concerned about the quote unquote golden handcuffs. I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about your your philosophy and belief and perspective around the golden handcuffs and what is the unraveling of what I do is who I am.
Yes. So let me just be honest in that I've been in the golden handcuffs. I remember in my mid 30s, I'd been working for an organization for 12 years. I had a really great salary. I was a single mom, so I needed this salary. My divorce, agreement did not include child support. I had great benefits. I had a good title. I was working for an organization that was really well known in town and had all the best places to work awards. And I'd have grown up there. So, when I introduced myself, and I think listeners know this, lots of times when you introduce yourself or even in your friends, you talk about work. Well, what do you do? And I had never known a version of myself that didn't say, hi, I'm Kelly. I work at XYZ Bank. And I remember though, like I felt kind of that blah feeling, where I think that's what the golden handcuffs is. It's like the money is so good, the benefits are so good, the stability is so good, but something was affecting my mental health. I didn't feel like I was using my best talents every day. I really didn't. While the organization was honestly outstanding, they were a bank. They were very compliance regulated, and I'm kind of like a move fast and break things sort of person, which didn't really align values wise, and that got tiring. They need people who like to color in the lines, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And it was really eating on me to the point where I was feeling the burnout symptoms of lack of motivation, lack of creativity, but the money. I mean, here I am, I got a house payment. I've got
Mhm.
child, responsibilities. I can't just up and quit. I wasn't in a place where I had a savings account that would allow me just to, do whatever, right? And so I really had to address, and I feel like when in my own personal life and when I'm working with clients, there's three things that come up when it comes to the golden handcuffs, three worries I often hear that keep people from moving. I think the first thing is regret. What if I make a move and I regret it because what if like the current job that I'm in is not as bad as I think it is? And I make a move and I regret it. And I think that held me back for a while. I know that it holds other women back because I hear it all the time. The other key thing that I think keeps us in the golden handcuffs is we have a bias for comfort. And that is we often prefer the hell we know to the hell we don't know.
Mm, yeah.
I can speak to this personally, and I even know research shows this. That's why a lot of people stay in unhealthy relationships because at least it's the hell that I know. The ego hates ambiguity. The ego hates change. So I'm just going to stay here because it's the hell that I know, and the money's really good. And the third reason why I think a lot of people stay in the golden handcuffs is imposter syndrome. And I felt this too. I'd worked there for 12 years, and I honestly thought to myself, like, what if I've just been lucky? Like, what
Mm,
if I'm good here just because it's just my experience and I know people and I've got relationships? Like, what if I go to another company and I completely unravel and I'm found out that I'm really not as good as people think that I am, and this is all just luck? And so I think I really just want to offer folks who are listening that if you're feeling like a fear of regret, a bias for the status quo, and all that imposter syndrome, this is so normal. It's so normal because the ego just does not like change. And I want you just to honor that that's part of recognizing that you're in the golden handcuffs. And for people who have a monetary concern, my best advice to you is just to be patient. So when I decided, you know what? Yes, I feel all these worries, regret, the bias for comfort, and imposter syndrome. I needed to make a change because in my gut, I was like, I can't, 5 years from now, I can't be doing this. 2 years from now, I can't be doing this. So I just gave myself permission that this was going to take a while because I can't just up and quit. I just didn't
yeah.
have that sort of financial privilege. So I said, you know what? It's probably going to take a year for me to find the next right role. And I just was okay with that. And I was patient because I wanted to make a leap and interview and ask hard questions in the interview to make sure that this new job was in alignment with my values and my talents. And I was passionate about the customers that they served. And so I did just give myself patience. And that's what I would recommend is, just know that when you're feeling handcuffed, you may not make a change in 6 weeks, and that's okay. In fact, it might serve you better if you just give yourself a little bit of permission to allow this to take some time, which for high achievers, I know they kind of want to change tomorrow, but that's honestly my best advice is take the time and give yourself the patience to do it right so that you can make the right change and not just leap to something so that you can get out of the situation that you're in. Because then you're right, it may not always be better.
that is such fantastic advice. And I love how you very clearly painted an expectation around timeline.
Mhm.
I'll say to clients when we're talking, and I'm like, if you could have the ideal job, when would you want to have it? And yesterday's not the right answer,
I
right?
know.
And it does help frame those conversations around what their runway is to get there. And sometimes that runway is reasonable, and other times we have to do a reset around, okay, so if you want to get that new job in a month, what has to happen? And then we start talking about all the pressures they're putting on themselves and saying, okay, what else could you do? And work
Yes.
through that because the three things that you talked about in terms of the golden handcuffs, the regret, the bias of comfort, and the imposter syndrome, I have never heard phrased like that before. And that is so clear to me. So thank you for offering that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I totally felt it. And just to land that plane, I just want to let folks know that I want to say it did take me 9 to 10 months to find that next right job.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that I took that time because that next job that I found, I was conscious and intentional about interviewing them to make sure that they matched my values, that I could use my talents. And then I was working for a company that I was really passionate about what they did. And I loved that job. It was a great move. And I was so happy I was patient with myself. So it did take some time, but the time paid off. So
Well, Kelli, you have shared so many wonderful things today. And as we start wrapping up, my question to you is, what advice would you give for someone to help them build their mid-career GPS?
I would revisit something we've already talked about, which is get really clear on what you value at work. How do you want to work? What are your non-negotiables? Think back. What are my best talents? What are the things that I've done at work where I've just geeked out? I love to use that term, right? Like, where do I just
Mm,
geek out at work? And when you know what your values are, you know what your talents are, I want you to start saying no to everything that isn't that. And at the end of the day, like really just trust yourself and your body. Like I think, our bodies are trustworthy. And if you really trust your gut and you notice your energy and you notice what lights up your energy and what sinks your energy, and really thinking about that as a compass and a GPS, I don't think you can ever go wrong in trusting your gut and following your energy in a place that feels good. So,
thank you for that. And I want to turn the mic over to you because if anybody wants to connect with you and learn more about you, and also to get your new book, which drops today on November 1st, Kelli, the mic is yours. Please let us know everything and where people can connect with you.
oh, thank you so much. So, a place you can always find everything about me is my website, which is kellyraythompson.com. And I'm Kelli with an I, R-A-E, Thompson. I've got a free career clarity guide on there that you can download if you want to start putting some of the things we talked about into practice. Of course, I've got my book. And then the two places that I hang out are on Instagram and LinkedIn. And so, Instagram, I'm at Kelli Ray Thompson, and LinkedIn, I'm in /Kelli Ray Thompson. I'd love to hear from you. Send me your questions.
I will make sure that all of that is in the show notes. But again, congratulations on your book, Closing the Confidence Gap, Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck. I wish you much success with the book. And Kelli, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, my friends, today was another powerful conversation about helping you put the components together for your mid-career GPS. So whether you're struggling and dealing with imposter syndrome, or maybe you have those golden handcuffs, hopefully today's conversation sheds some clarity around this topic and conversation for you. Feel free to reach out to Kelli. You can always connect with me on my website at johnneral.com, or certainly drop me a message on LinkedIn and let me know how much you enjoyed today's conversation. And until next time, remember this: we build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. And I'd appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review. Visit johnneral.com to download your free copy of the 55-minute career transition jumpstart to help you start building your mid-career GPS. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.